he sees history as repeating itself. Now, what that means, we shall talk about that a little later, but what it essentially means is this, that any historical situation can create and absorb and make use of the highest that man is capable of creating. There aren't any privileged situations, there are no privileged eras, and therefore any era that sees itself as capable of fully understanding or fully creating these values should be allowed to do that. And the trouble is that the late 19th century, the early 20th century may very well be what he calls eras of decadence, in which this strength cannot be fully realized.
Now, your mention of his doctrine that history repeats itself brings me to what I would like to think of as the next stage in our discussion. When one comes to regard Nietzsche's later work, there are four big themes in it, and again, I think for clarity's sake, it will help if we take them one at a time.
Yes.
One is what you might summarize under the phrase, the will to power, a phrase which he has popularized. One is the Übermensch, or translated as the Superman, again, an invention of his that's entered our language. One is this doctrine you mentioned of the eternal recurrence of time. And the fourth, I would say, is his notion of the aesthetic understanding of life.
Yes.
Now, let's deal with those in order. Let's talk first about the will to power, which at one time he was going to give as a title to the summation of his life's work.
Yes.
What was this notion of his, the will to power?
Well, he takes the notion of the will from your own special philosopher Schopenhauer, of course, and he reverses the evaluation of that, where Schopenhauer regarded the will as the source of all evil in the world and as the source of man's unhappiness. He regards it as the strength of man's strength, the source of man's strength, and the cultivation, the permission to the will to enact what it can enact is part of a healthy culture. Now, the difficulty there, I think, is that this obviously brings you in conflict with other people, and therefore at this stage the will to power becomes a will to self-assertion, a will to usurpation of the other. But that's not all there is to the will. I think it's to be emphasized, not overemphasized, as some critics have done, but to be emphasized, that the will to power also turns itself inward, that is to say, it destroys within the self all that is weak, all that is comfortable, all that is simply, part of a man's self-indulgence.
A kind of drastic bringing of oneself up to the mark,
up to the mark, which one has created oneself, and this is the difficult thing
about
the
mark.
The mark oneself, that's right, yes.
Well, now let's move on then to the next of the four main themes of his later work, the Superman. Now, everybody knows the word Superman, and it was in fact Nietzsche who invented it. It's been a very much misunderstood concept. People have associated it with the blonde beast of Hitlerian mythology and Nazi caricature. Of course, that's not what he meant at all, was it?
I think that is not what he meant at all. I think the Superman is the man, the production, I mean, who can be produced by any civilization. Remember I said that any era is capable of bringing forth the maximum values that men are capable of. Superman is the man who lives all that the will to power will secure for him, lives it to the full, is capable of repeating his own willing ad infinitum. We're already arriving at the doctrine, at the most controversial of all the things, the most bizarre, if you like, of these views, the eternal recurrence.
Yes, let's get there quite yet, because I want to unpack this notion of the Superman, which has played such an enormous role in the thought in the last 100 years, and been so abused and misused by the Nazis, for example. Wouldn't it be truer to say that what Nietzsche was actually trying to get at was the notion of an unrepressed man
Yes.
in, if you like, the Freudian sense,
Yes.
a man who has re-evaluated his
Yes.
values,
Yes.
who is not living his life according to false values, who is being to the top of his bench in an
Yes.
uninhibited,
Yes.
untrammeled, free spirit
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Isn't that rather
Yes,
the
I think
notion
that
of
is
the
so.
Superman?
And but it would be a man who, without, as it were, restricting himself, would naturally, instinctively, not do any of the things that Nietzsche regards as evil. For instance, the one category that he comes out unequivocally in his system is grudgingness, is what he calls ressentiment, is the grudgingness, the grudging admission of warmth, the grudging admission of success, and all these kind of things. Now, the Superman is one who naturally does not feel any of these things. You know the story.
It's the generous spirit.
It is a generous spirit, yes. And there again you see the whole notion of the Christian generous spirit is not all that far from Nietzsche's purview.